flow reduces but stays the same in that system. So when afferent arteriole is constricted, that would drop the pressure in the glomerulus. That would also reduce the flow. So what would happen is afferent arteriolar constriction, reduced hydrostatic pressure, no change to the oncotic pressure. Glomerular filtration rate is actually dependent upon a couple of things. I have to make that here before we talk about it. In this case, so why not we discuss that too. So I'm going to erase this for a second and discuss the filtration fraction before we go back to that table. So what is filtration fraction? Filtration fraction is the amount of plasma filtered into the Bowman space per unit time. And so filtration fraction is over here, 600 milliliter plasma comes in, about 120 is the milliliter per minute is filtered. This is called the filtration fraction. This is also GFR. So GFR, how it is done is this, that filtration fraction equals GFR divided by renal plasma flow. Divided by renal plasma flow. So that is the filtration fraction. So remember this, if GFR, let's say, is 120 milliliter per minute, and let's say if the filtration fraction is 20, renal plasma flow is 600 milliliter, which we know per minute, then the filtration fraction is 0.2, right, or 20. Remember there are no units, unit cancel out, so 0.2 or 20%. So what that means is that out of 600 milliliter of plasma coming in, 20% is filtered out. That is the glomerular filtration per minute, right? 20%. Actually units are not there. So 20% is the filtration fraction. Now think about it. If this 120 becomes 240, so if I say 240 divided by, plasma flow stays the same, 600. Now filtration fraction has gone up to 40%. On the other hand, if I make it 60, so 60 divided by 600 is 10%. But, so that is if I change the glomerular filtration rate without changing the plasma flow. But if both of them change, for example, if it is 240, GFR is 240, doubled from 120, but 600 plasma flow is also doubled to 1200. What do you think filtration fraction is going to be? Still the same, 20%. So remember this, that if GFR changes and filtration fraction changes, both of them, if numerator and denominator, they both change equally up or down, then the filtration fraction is not going to change. That's a very important concept to remember, because that is how the GFR will be affected. So now let's do the same table once more, and I'll do it this way. I'll say, let's say mechanism, let's say net filtration pressure change, oncotic change. This is in the, actually forget about the oncotic change, net filtration pressure change, then the renal plasma flow change, GFR change, and then filtration fraction change. So that is the mechanism. So afferent arteriolar dilatation. Afferent arteriolar dilatation increases the blood flow in here, increases the pressure, so net filtration pressure increases. Renal plasma flow increases slightly, so I'll say sort of like that. GFR increases, so now what happens to the filtration fraction? Filtration fraction equals GFR divided by renal plasma flow. So here GFR is increased, renal plasma flow is almost the same, so what happens to the GFR itself? Increases, filtration fraction increases. So afferent arteriolar dilatation would increase the filtration fraction. Afferent arteriolar constriction. Constriction would reduce the flow plus reduce the what is that? Net pressure. Pressure will be reduced here. So net filtration pressure reduced. Renal plasma flow reduced, but really slightly. GFR, because the pressure has reduced, GFR will be reduced. So filtration fraction, GFR divided by renal plasma flow. So what thing is reduced more? The GFR, renal plasma flow is the same, filtration fraction reduces. Cool. Then let's talk about the efferent arterioles. Efferent arteriolar dilatation. If the efferent arteriole dilates, it would wash out more of the fluids quickly. So what would happen is net filtration pressure would reduce because the fluids are just going to fall out of it very quickly. Renal plasma flow dilatation would really, we have the afferent arteriole which is controlling the flow, so there is not going to be much change to the flow. GFR, because of less pressure here, now GFR is going to reduce. So now again filtration fraction is GFR divided by renal plasma flow. This would reduce. Right? Now this is important. Next one, efferent arteriolar constriction. Efferent arteriolar constriction. This is really important because if you go to the Guyton actually explains it very well. Efferent arteriolar constriction it has a biphasic response. What does that mean? Biphasic response means that when the efferent arteriole constricts, you have to figure out, is it moderate constriction or major constriction. So let's talk about the moderate constriction. When the moderate constriction occurs with the efferent arteriolar, so moderate constriction, that would cause pressure to increase here. That increased pressure would of course cause increased GFR, and renal plasma flow is going to be almost the same. So net filtration pressure increase, not much change to the plasma flow. GFR increase, filtration fraction, GFR divided by plasma flow would increase. That is if the efferent arterioles are constricting moderately. That is the biphasic part. So biphasic part will be, in the beginning there will be increase to the filtration fraction and GFR. Then efferent arteriolar constriction severe. And how does Guyton define severe? It says severe will mean threefold increase. If there is about threefold increase in the efferent arteriolar constriction, that means reduction in diameter is threefold, 3 times, then what happens is, come here for a second, if there is so much constriction, then there is going to be a lot of filtration because the flow is going to reduce. Although pressure has increased, remember hydrostatic pressure went up. Why? Because the fluid cannot go out and the fluid is coming in, pressure has gone up. So you expect that hydrostatic pressure going up would mean increased GFR because the push of the fluid from here to here is increased. But check this out. Fluid is going out, right? Hydrostatic pressure of course would start reducing because the fluid is getting out of the glomerulus. But check this out. The relative concentration of proteins is increasing and Donan effect is increasing. Donan effect is increasing, relative concentration of proteins is increasing. That would cause the oncotic pressure in the glomerular capillary to increase drastically because of Donan effect too, because now the things which are attached to the protein are also exerting their effect because they're just sitting around there and there is less fluid. That increase in colloid osmotic pressure is enough that the back pull increases so much, this opposing force increases so much that ultimately there is less GFR. That's a very important. So net filtration pressure actually reduces. In the early part of the glomerulus, hydrostatic pressure is high. In the second part of the glomerulus, later part of the glomerulus, oncotic pressure and Donan effect is high. That oncotic pressure and Donan effect beats out the hydrostatic effect, resulting in lesser net filtration pressure, resulting in less GFR. So do not forget this. This is very, very important. So net filtration pressure would reduce. Net filtration pressure will reduce. And then renal plasma flow of course is reduced. GFR will be reduced and filtration fraction will not be. So when reduced GFR and reduced renal plasma flow, there is not going to be much change to the filtration fraction. So that is a very, very important mechanism. And why is that mechanism that way? What do we want to do here? What we are trying to do here is, this may be a situation where we are severely hypovolemic. And in that case, when we are reducing the GFR, we would then, and slowing down the flow, we would actually be able to reabsorb more. And so we are trying to preserve the substances and fluids and minerals to keep them in the body. we're trying to preserve blood pressure and blood volume.